This is TWiT.
Well, folks, it's time for the bites. Now, have we and the media done a really good job, or maybe even a bad job, of convincing that smart appliances might be more convenient, but actually maybe more dangerous? Well, according to this Ars Technica article, appliance makers like Whirlpool and LG out there can't understand why 50% of their customers connect their devices. That means 50% of the other customers don't connect their devices. Now, this article calls out a Wall Street Journal report, which states that customers don't actually know all the things that a manufacturer can actually do if the users or if they themselves connect the device that spins their clothes or keeps their food cold. Now, that's the like providing manufacturers with data insights about how customers are using their products, or other things like allowing customers to send over-the-air updates like firmware updates, or in fact maybe even advertising for relevant parts, replacement parts, or even subscription services. Now, the new revenue model of 2023 and beyond is services. You and I both know that. Now, this means that companies like Whirlpool are actually missing out on services revenue, which is an increasingly crucial to manufacturers who are actually facing rising costs and declining replacement purchases, and in fact, hungry shareholders that are out there. As an example, why they need these service connections, LG saw an actually increase in water filter sales when it tracked water volumes on connected fridges versus non-connected fridges. Now, to me, manufacturers are in a bit of denial here. Is it really because customers are unsure about the intentions of the connected devices, or is it something else? Because, these devices are somewhat unsafe. They don't have good security measures by opening up a number of them to the internet. They include potentially being taken over to become part of a botnet. They have short supply shelf and as well as short shelf life for their firmwares and their software updates, meaning a washer and dryer might last 10 years and it's open to attacks for more than half of that. Now, there's a lot of questions here. I want to bring my co-host back in because I feel like this article points out the point of view from the manufacturer side. They're saying, hey, like customers are just really unsure of what we're going to do with the data. Maybe we just need to do a better job of advertising. I have a different point of view. My point of view here is I think customers are a little bit enlightened here, and they understand that there's some risk when you actually put these things on there, especially seeing that, devices that I have here, refrigerators, washers and dryers that are connected, they don't get updates anymore. So the question to you guys is, do you think that they maybe need to start forcing manufacturers like LG and Whirlpool to start following some set of standards, especially around security and as well as what they do with your data? What do you guys think?
Well, I'm going to go with a thing of I'm not sure that regulation is required, but certainly reining in some lazy programmers. For example, there's a story over on the Register that talks about some smart appliances that were doing some very dumb things. In this case, a researcher who is also, as it turns out, Lou, a Microsoft MVP in security, saw some strange traffic coming out of his home network. It turns out that a couple of his appliances, smart appliances built by a company called AEG, are Wi-Fi connected. And like a lot of Wi-Fi connected devices, they do regular checks to see if there's an internet connection. The frequent way of doing this is pinging a public website. I know when I set up a network somewhere, one of the first things I do is go out and ping CNN or someplace like that just to see if I've got a connection. Well, they go out and they ping google.com. So far, so good. But they also ping a couple of other sites like Baidu.cn, which is popular in China, and Yandex.ru, which is a Russian search engine. Now, just imagine, if you will, that you are a company that does government contracting and you put one of these toasters in your break room and suddenly you see traffic going to Russia and China. Someone's going to have questions. The same can be true of lots of individuals. Why on earth would you have traffic going to these places? The answer, of course, is that just like Google, they tend to be up. But the strange thing is that the company that made the ovens and the toasters has their own web service. They have their own cloud. Why not ping yourself? The article points out, and it's quite true, a number of large companies, including Apple, including Microsoft, including Facebook and Amazon, all have devices that regularly ping the internet to see if there's an internet connection, but they also have their own dedicated sites that are used for those pings, so it doesn't generate spurious traffic. So I think that, we won't even call it high security programming. We're going to call it a modest amount of common sense would go a long way, as would some of the same services that we are used to getting from commercial products that are connected. Lou, you mentioned the idea of appliances and other devices letting you know when consumables are nearing the end of their life. I know when I had an EMC squared storage device at a lab that I ran, it was not at all uncommon for me to get a phone call from EMC service saying, "Hey, we noticed that one of the drives in that cabinet is starting to go slightly out of balance. We'll have somebody there in an hour to replace that drive," before it failed. And that's the kind of real service that I think could drive people to want to have this connectivity. I don't need my refrigerator to help me make my shopping list. I would like it to let me know if something is beginning to go wrong with the compressor so I can get it taken care of before my food spoils.
Hey, Cheebert, regulation, no regulation, useful, not useful?
Regulation, big no. I'm more of hands off, please. Now, as far as should they do a better job? Yeah. Just like Curt, I was actually a NetApp customer, and it was really, really awesome to have them schedule. I'd actually have parts arrive even before I knew I had a problem. That was amazing. And as a result, we actually held on to our NetApp appliance a lot longer than we had actually thought we were going to. And I would love the same thing in my appliances, but all the smart appliances I've been working, I've got a couple of LGs and I've got some Samsungs, and truth be told, I'm not impressed. They're trying to get some, they're basically trying to tell me different things like, is my oven hot? I don't care. I want to know if something's going wrong. I want to know if, my oven is smoking or something like that. It would be great if the washer and dryers did something other than just go beep. I know Curtis put a webcam on his washer dryer just so that they can find out when things are done. And I keep thinking, gee, wouldn't it be nice if that was, say, a LoRa-enabled device or a Bluetooth-enabled, something, so that I can have an app that actually tells me something that I need, like how many minutes are left in a spin cycle or what have you. Now, so here's one of the things that I really would like our friends to start thinking about. Wi-Fi is great. But how many of you have your washer and dryer in the garage? And how many people actually have a strong Wi-Fi signal in their garage or in a separate laundry or something? So many vendors are going crazy and saying, oh, we're just going to put Wi-Fi in it mostly because the Wi-Fi chip and so forth is really cheap. And sadly, a lot of these appliance manufacturers aren't integrating it in. It's a slap-on. It might be something as simple as maybe an ESP32 microprocessor that's just monitoring what normally would be a buzzer line or a door alarm or something. Very simple stuff. It's just standard IO. And they're using that to go to apps. And they're not doing a very good job of writing apps. Most of the apps that I've seen from appliance manufacturers are buggy. And if you try to do some pen testing on them, you find out they're leaking all kinds of data, and their security is almost useless. I'm kind of wondering about that. And not only that, I've actually made complaints to several manufacturers saying, hey, could you guys please close up this security hole in this app? I get crickets, nothing. So realistically, appliances are still really primitive. And please hire some real programmers. I don't know who your programmers are. I don't know who you're outsourcing it to, but think hard. Your designs stink.
Interesting that you said that. I think I was reading an article, a research paper recently around the fact that obviously there's going to be a lot more IoT devices out there. Obviously we're seeing it right now with smart fridges and so on. And the fact that there needs to be somewhat of a level of framework for organizations to follow, maybe not a set of standards, but at least a framework for them to follow. And I think they've called out several areas that they would like organizations, manufacturers to follow and actually have some level of security and reliability into them. Different categories they were able to kind of call out here is obviously integrity, making sure that, in the case of if you're going to connect something to Wi-Fi, make sure it's done securely, make sure that, there's a way for you to isolate the type of data that goes over the network, make sure that there's not a way to execute or invoke operations on the device that could cause harm to the actual device itself, that kind of thing. And that goes to same thing with availability. That's the next category, is making sure that if the device is always on or available, it could mean that it is also a security risk and a safety risk, because that means it could be accessed at any point in time. And that means that somebody externally could maybe fake traffic from these websites that are out there that maybe their Whirlpool service or whatnot, and make the device do something that they didn't necessarily want it to do, and that could cause a safety risk. So that's another problem, is making sure that you follow up and ensure that there's a good set of availability. Authentication is the next one, is just making sure that you secure the device, you make sure that you're securing the firmware, you find ways to secure, especially during updates, that verify its integrity before you update the device. So I think essentially a framework, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on at least having a framework. But the other thing I want to throw out there is I'm seeing short-lived support from companies, and they can choose whatever they want. I mean, I just recently got emails from Amazon around my Eero devices. Just even after 4 years, they've decided to no longer put updates on. These are the Eero Pros, put updates on the devices. So now they're basically just bricks on my desk over here. So the question to you guys is, should we start forcing corporations, if they're going to put something in the wild that can be connected to the internet, should we force them to provide some level of security support for over a period of time? Companies like Microsoft, they do it for 10 plus years. Should this be required for IoT devices as well? What do you guys think?
Well, let me start with, you mentioned a framework. Funny you should, because there is such a thing. The National Institute of Safety and Technology, or Science and Technology, NIST, has a cybersecurity for IoT program. Obviously, they have lots of stuff for federal agencies, but they do have consumer IoT products, manufacturers. So, it's not as though no one has ever thought of this. People have thought of it. It's just getting the manufacturers to adopt it that's the hard part. Now, as for forcing manufacturers, we've got some of that on a state level. If you'll recall, California has implemented some IoT cybersecurity regulations for things that are being sold in the future. They tend to regard things like the ability to be updated and the ability to, say, change your password, administrative password and all that, not the requirement that they be updated. It's a good question. And I'm sure that if pressed, the good folks who sell Eero would say that, well, they're not bricks. They still work. They're just now massive security holes. Yeah, there's a huge difference there. And so what we get to decide as consumers is how important these things are to us. If, as consumers, we vote with our pocketbooks and buy the devices, buy the systems that have better security, have more mature programming, then the competition will see that and adapt. If we continue to buy the cheapest thing, regardless of whether or not it invites, programmers from around the world into our living room, then that's exactly what we're going to get.
Tech Break on the TWiT Network is brought to you by ACI Learning. ACI Learning offers customizable training in audit, cybersecurity, and IT. Entertaining and effective, Audit Pro allows employees to advance their skills and earn NASBA-approved CPE credits. For compliance or upskilling, your team can learn anytime, anywhere. Visit ACIlearning.com and learn how ACI can level up your IT team.